The sun dipped low across the dusty plains as Ethan Crowley, a lone cowboy known more for his honesty than for his luck, rode into the remote frontier town of Red Gulch in search of work. His horse was thin, his pockets empty, and his future uncertain. Rumors whispered through the saloons that the wealthiest and most feared ranch owner in the region, Boss McGraw, was hiring men for a dangerous mission, guarding a massive cattle shipment against bandits. Ethan, desperate and hungry, pushed through the swinging doors of the Bullhorn Tavern, hoping to negotiate a fair wage. But instead of a job, he walked into a trap woven by desperation, power, and secrets. Boss McGraw sat at a large table, surrounded by armed men, his broad frame an icy stare enough to quiet an entire room. Ethan approached slowly, tipped his hat, and asked about the job. McGraw didn't smile, didn't blink, didn't offer a seat. Instead, his gravelly voice crawled through the silence. "I'll give you the job, boy, but only if you marry my daughter." The entire tavern froze. A few men coughed, others looked away, and Ethan felt every pair of eyes shift toward a shadowed corner where a tall figure stood behind a veil, McGraw's daughter. McGraw leaned back. "She ain't been wanted by any man. They call her ugly, cursed, strange. But she's my blood. You marry her, you stay alive and employed. You refuse, you leave town tonight, or you don't leave at all." Ethan felt the air tighten. The woman in the veil didn't speak, didn't move, didn't even lift her head. Ethan wasn't the type to judge anyone by looks, but the room's reaction made him uneasy. He had heard legends of McGraw's cruelty, stories of cowboys who disobeyed him and vanished without a trace. Ethan swallowed hard. He needed money. He needed survival. But marriage? Without knowing the woman? Still, something about her silence stirred curiosity rather than fear. Against every instinct, he said quietly, "If she agrees." "I'll agree." McGraw slammed his hand on the table, grinning. "Good. The wedding is tomorrow at dawn." Before Ethan could ask questions, McGraw's men surrounded him, escorting him out like a prisoner instead of a groom. That night, Ethan was locked inside an old bunkhouse under guard, given no chance to escape or even think clearly. He stared at the cracked ceiling and wondered if he had doomed himself. Why was McGraw so desperate? Why force marriage on a stranger? And who was the woman behind that veil? Soft footsteps crept outside his door. A gentle knock. "Ethan," whispered a female voice, soft, trembling, almost musical. "I'm sorry for what he's making you do." Ethan sat up sharply. "Why?" he asked through the wooden door. "Because I don't want anyone hurt because of me. My father thinks marrying me will protect our family, that it will fix everything. But he never asked what I wanted." Ethan sensed sadness, deep and honest. "Do you want this?" he asked. Silence hovered for several seconds. "I want freedom," she whispered. "More than anything." The guards interrupted, dragging her away before Ethan could speak again. He lay awake the rest of the night, wondering if tomorrow would be the beginning of a new life or the end of his. When dawn arrived, the sky turned gold over the desert. The entire town gathered in front of the McGraw ranch, buzzing with gossip and morbid curiosity. The veiled daughter stood alone, her hands clasped tightly, shoulders trembling beneath the weight of her father's demands. McGraw pushed Ethan forward. "Stand there, boy." The preacher began a rushed ceremony, rushing through vows as if fearing McGraw would snap his neck for speaking too slow. Ethan kept glancing at the veiled woman, feeling something strange, concern, sympathy, even connection. Just as the preacher declared them husband and wife, McGraw barked, "Lift the veil. Let's get this done." The crowd leaned forward. Ethan's pulse thundered. He reached out and raised the veil. As the delicate veil lifted, the entire crowd gasped, not in disgust, but in stunned disbelief, for beneath it stood one of the most breathtaking young women Ethan had ever seen. Her eyes gleamed like midnight lakes, her skin smooth and sun-kissed, her features soft yet fiercely confident. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. She was not ugly. She was not cursed. She was extraordinary. But before he could speak, she quickly lowered her gaze, clearly expecting rejection. Boss McGraw growled, "Now you see why I kept her covered. Beauty attracts danger. Men kill for gold, but they slaughter for a woman like her." Ethan realized that McGraw's motive wasn't shame, it was obsession and control. The daughter, whose name was Alara, was a prisoner of her father's paranoia. McGraw believed her beauty would bring ruin. Bandits kidnapping her, suitors fighting for her, rivals using her as leverage. So he hid her from the world, masking her behind lies and forcing her into silence. Ethan stepped closer and gently took her hand. "You're not what they say," he whispered. "You're not cursed. You're not unwanted." Alara's eyes shimmered with confusion. No man had ever spoken to her like that. The crowd murmured restlessly, realizing McGraw had deceived them for years. McGraw's jaw tightened. "Enough. You're married, the deal is done. You'll work for me now, Cowboy. Do as I say and no harm comes to her." Ethan wanted to object, but a dozen rifles pointed toward him. He squeezed Alara's hand instead, silently promising protection. Days passed. Ethan learned the truth. Alara had spent most of her life locked inside the ranch, living hidden behind veils, masks, and walls. The stories of her ugliness were invented by McGraw himself to keep men away. When Ethan asked why she never ran, she whispered, "He always finds me." And when he does, people get hurt. Ethan also noticed the ranch was in trouble. McGraw's enemies were growing. Bandits circled the property, and his own men were losing loyalty. One night, McGraw confronted Ethan in the barn. "I chose you because you're honest and desperate. You won't betray me." Ethan stared at him. "I won't betray Alara, that's different." McGraw's face darkened. "Remember your place, boy." But Ethan no longer feared him. The more he learned, the more determined he became to free Alara from the ranch, from fear, from her father. The turning point came 3 days after the wedding. A group of bandits, tipped off by rumors, raided the ranch demanding McGraw surrender the hidden beauty he'd been protecting. McGraw panicked. His men scattered. Gunfire erupted across the property. Amid the chaos, Ethan grabbed Alara's hand. "This is our moment. Do you trust me?" She hesitated, then nodded firmly. Together, they slipped through the smoke-filled fields toward Ethan's horse. But before they could mount, McGraw stumbled after them, bleeding and furious.
"You can't take her."
"She's mine," he roared. Ethan stepped in front of Alara. "She's not property." McGraw aimed his shotgun, but his trembling hands and fading strength betrayed him. Before he could fire, bandit gunshots echoed behind him and he collapsed. Ethan shielded Alara from the sight, pulled her onto the horse, and rode until Red Gulch was nothing but a memory. At sunrise the next morning, they stood atop a ridge overlooking open land. No walls, no guards, no chains. Alara breathed freely for the first time in years. "What now?" she asked softly. Ethan smiled. "Whatever life you choose. You're free." She studied him, her eyes warming. "Then I choose a life where no one hides me." Again, and as the new day spread across the plains, they rode forward, not as strangers forced together, but as two souls finally claiming their destiny. And that, dear viewers, is why stories like this remind us freedom, courage, and love can overcome even the darkest chains. If you enjoyed this story and want more powerful chapters, twists, and emotional journeys, make sure to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and support the storytelling that keeps adventures like this alive.